I can honestly say like getting divorced was the best gift. It's the best thing that I've ever done for myself, because being on the other side of the divorce has taught me like all those pressures, all the rules, all the playbooks that I had in my head about how life needed to go. Like, number one, came crashing down. And I realized that that's actually not what people hold as the most important thing. For me to be happy, for other people to be happy.
Are you in a relationship that doesn't feel quite right, but you feel some pressure from your community, your family, that you need to stay together? Today, I'm talking with Korean American Sujin Hong. Sujin grew up in many different cities across the United States and even Korea, and she went to 7 different schools. She went to the University of California Irvine for her BA and master's, and then the University of Southern California for her Doctor of Education. She was inspired by her teachers to become a teacher herself, and then eventually became a principal. During this time, she also fell in love, but 2 years into the marriage, she realized that he might not be the one. She, though, felt pressure because she was a principal, and she also had her parents who had very strong Korean values, that even through struggling with years of infertility and trying to have a baby, IVF, it wasn't until a fateful Christmas evening when she decided that enough was enough. She was getting a divorce. In Boss Mamas, we often talk about how breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. And for Sujin, she shares how this tough moment, this tough decision and breakdown actually was the best gift. Divorce was the best gift she could have asked for. It opened up so much for her personal life, for her work life, and it's really exciting to see this journey. I'm excited for you to meet this boss mama. Clapping on 1, 3, 2, 1. Sujin, you and I have something in common that most people don't, in that we went to a lot of schools growing up. Even before college, I went to 8 schools because I moved around so much as a military kid. How many schools did you go to?
I think that I went to about 7 schools while growing up. And I think like being a military kid would make the most amount of sense. But what I generally tell people is that like my parents just really like to pack and unpack, which is, not necessarily true, but some aspect of it had to be, right? So my parents moved around a lot when when my brother and I were younger, because they were helping with like family businesses, as well as they wanted my brother and I to be educated in the Korean system so that we can communicate with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. So we actually moved from when I was 8 to 16 to Korea, which I think like ticked up the number of schools that we ended up going to. So yeah, long answer for a very short, I think it's 7. Yeah. 7 schools.
Sujin, so I'm picturing you going to these different schools, and sometimes I imagine like you, like me and you, we were dropped in the middle of a school year. So you're this new kid and you are in a new school. Tell us about a time when you are in a new school and you're navigating the demographics and trying to be you. Tell us about a time.
Oh man, I think about I could think about 2 distinct examples. Like the first time was when we actually moved to Korea, and we ended up going to like a Korean school. My Korean was not very good. And I was, so naturally the only thing that we have is like our body language. And like I could tell like I was a little bit bigger and more awkward than the kids. So like I think I quickly learned the value of like comedic performance. Like that definitely worked. And as an 8-year-old kid, like I figured that out, right? And so I think I try to make as many friends as possible through comedy. which has been like a lifesaver, right? Like I can adapt to a lot of different situations through humor, and make friends very quickly through humor. Um, Sustaining friendship is, a weakness that I could talk about later, but yeah, so that would be the first time that happened. And then the second time it happened is actually when I moved. There was like a year where we moved back stateside, came back to Korea, and then my parents were like, okay, you're done with Korean school. I'm going to put you in an international school. I'm like, cool, international school. I'm going to go to school with like international kids. And like, turns out they're all like expats, like living in Korea. And, but they had been in school together from like basically kindergarten all the way to seventh grade, which is when I joined them. And once again, comedy was my saving grace, right? Like just trying to make people laugh and build friendships really quickly, and not really talk about academics. And that's generally, I think, how I survived and thrived at that middle school. It didn't work for the high school transition though. So
I'm picturing you at 8, and I too am working on my own language skills, Tagalog, and you're working on Korean. And here you are, and you're doing a comedic performance. I mean, what did that look like, especially since you couldn't speak in Korean?
oh yeah, no, it was definitely a lot of like body, like I embodied the Three Stooges, like awkwardly tripping. And part of it might have just been my awkwardness that I like made funny, and was like, ta-da, look at me. I just, spilled everything that was on your desk accidentally while I was looking for my chair. Like, so I think it was kind of like that, because language really didn't work. you know I just didn't have a grasp on that at all. So um yeah, I think that's what it felt like, looked like, this like awkward kid, like basically a bull in a china shop, right? And hoping that people would laugh.
Well, I laughed. I laughed when the first time I met you. And it's so rare, frankly, Sujane, to have a funny Asian woman, because usually as an Asian woman, society has ideas that we are good at math, we play piano. In Filipino world, we'll be a nurse. And to have you break out into a joke, I remember you said something and I was like, oh my goodness, she's serious. And you said, I'm just kidding. And I was so wowed, because I don't meet many Asian women who are hilarious. So I love that about you. I'm picturing, though, being in Korea, and you're at the hardcore Korean schools. I did some research being in schools, both of us in education. Korean schools are hardcore. So, what was it like for you to be at these schools with not having the language, and you're surrounded by a whole community who are really into school?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Failure comes to mind. I feel like I tried really, really hard, like trying hard to fit in. I once I went to Korea, I wasn't Korean enough, right? And so that was a ding on me. I definitely did not know how to read or write. So there was a lot of catching up, but then I think once I did grasp the reading and writing, I didn't really understand what I was doing. And like that definitely showed in like all of the exams that we took. And I was really fortunate that my mom was, trying to keep up with the Korean Joneses, or I guess the Kims, right? And like sending me to like all the after school things. And then at the same time, like hating herself a little bit for doing that because she wanted me to be a kid. Um, and then realizing I had nobody to play with because everybody was doing the after school stuff. So I think it was like a mixture of things that I recognize now, but like as a child, as a student, I definitely felt like maybe I'm just not smart. Like I thought I got it, and then I would take the test and like I would bring home F's like pretty consistently, and didn't attribute that to like, oh, it's a language barrier. I definitely think I like internalized a little bit of that and was like, okay, so I guess doctor and lawyer and that sort of, you know those jobs are not for me, you know. And I think that's the narrative that I started putting in my head.
It's ironic because you go on to have a esteemed career in education, leading schools, which I love. But let's rewind first. So your mom wants you to play, you're doing all this hardcore school, you're coming home with Fs, it's not looking great. You transfer to an international school, and then you eventually come back stateside before college. What was it like when you came back stateside and you're now in the regular school?
Like it was it was like, it can't be this easy, right? School cannot be this easy. You cannot just go to school from 8 to 3:06 and be done, right? Like it was like one of those things where I really questioned what my academic experience had been and why I felt like such a failure. It was like during the last 2 years of school and of high school where I was like, oh, I knew that college was not even like it wasn't an option. It was the thing that you were going to do, right? But I had some reservations about it. And then like being in school with my peers in the US made me go, okay, yeah, I definitely belong in a college. You know, maybe it's not going to be Harvard or, you know, Yale, like the schools that my mom likes to like enunciate, you know, but I belong in a university setting and I actually want to become a teacher. So like I think it was a very different experience. Like I enjoyed school. Like I enjoyed being able to talk nerdy about some of the subjects and like actually have the vocabulary as well as like background knowledge that I know I would not have had if I didn't have to memorize it while I was going to Korean school.
So Jean, when you were now in America, did you have your sights set on being a teacher and that was set as a kid, or was that something that came about when you were in American schools?
There were two things. I've obviously reflected a lot about my journey towards becoming a teacher, and you know, we always talk about like how representation matters, and I was like, yeah, sure. And then the more I thought about it, I realized how much it did. So I had two phenomenal history teachers. One, her name was Jenny Kang, and she was my US history teacher at Seoul Foreign High School in Korea. She was a graduate of that school, went to Harvard, came back to teach, and I fell in love with US history because of her. And then the second one was actually when I came to the US because of the classes that I had taken at the school in Korea. It was advanced. So I was taking classes with all these seniors and I got to take econ my junior year. And there was a teacher named Kim Koratani, who was my econ teacher, who just made me fall in love with economics. And so I knew I wanted to become a social studies teacher. Fast forward, like, I don't know, I guess 10 years or so, I actually got to work with Miss Koratani for like the last like several years. And so I didn't always know, but it was 10th grade where I was like, this might be something interesting. I feel like I want to be like Miss Kong. And then when I had Miss Koratani, I was like, I definitely want to be a history teacher. Yeah.
I love stories like that where we look back at the teachers who inspired us because they're so darn good at teaching that we loved that content. I always thought, well, maybe if I love biology, I should be a doctor. Maybe because I love history, I should be a history teacher. When it was the teacher themselves being so passionate and wanting to have other kids learn why they loved the material so much. So what a gift. And to have these people actually represent your culture and being Asian, so rare and awesome.
Yeah, so rare and so cool, especially at the secondary level. We don't really see a lot of Asian American women like teaching at that level, at the high school level. And so I feel incredibly lucky to have crossed paths with like two phenomenal educators. I can't find Miss Kong. Like I can email Miss Koratani any day. I do every single year for Teacher Appreciation Week. And she's like, okay, I get it's Jean, you know. But yeah, Miss Kong I haven't been able to find.
So I'm going to fast forward then, and we're going to talk from work and career, school to love life. So
Mhm.
when did you meet the person you would eventually marry? When did that happen?
I met my well, I'm just gonna spoiler alerts, ex-husband in college. Yeah, so it was my senior year of college when I met my ex-husband.
And what you drew to him in particular?
So yeah, I had it's I think it's really hard to really state. What drew me to him specifically, I'm I mean, I guess like it was the fact that he was interested in me. I'm always a sucker for that. um, he was very different. He was white. He was from a small town, is what I found out eventually as I got to know him. And he was, I guess, like the epitome of like a small town white boy, right? Like, and then I developed like this like theory, like date white man, infiltrate friends, take over the world. Like that was my goal. So I think that was something that was like something really interesting, something that pulled me to him. Like he was kind. Um, he yeah showed interest.
I got to go into this mantra of yours, this 3-step process to take over the world. Where did you get that? What is that about?
Yeah, I think part of it was stolen from Pinky and the Brain, right? And I don't know, it was like one of those things where like I said it like as a joke, right? To my friends and then especially to his friends as well, right? Like as I'm like making friends with them, I was like, that my plan is to date white men, infiltrate friends, take over the world, right? And I kind of wonder now, like how much of my own like implicit biases, right, were actually like being stated through that. Like, why does it require dating a white man in order for me to take over the world? I don't know, you know. But yeah, it honestly started off as a joke. And now in this moment, like today, I am recognizing that maybe that was like my actual implicit biases, like spoken out loud, which I will go to therapy about. Yeah.
Sujeen, I mean, I married a white dude too. So there
Uh-huh.
is tons of implicit bias, or maybe not so implicit, since both my brother and I married white people.
Hmm.
And there's a ton of stuff, what's called stuff, that parent society say about colorism and racism that help us as we get lighter to be closer to the white norm,
Hmm.
that we're more powerful. So it's interesting to look
Yeah.
at that, having made decisions. I have children now with this man, and I wouldn't take it back because I have made my bed, but it's interesting to be
Yeah.
more knowledgeable now.
It's it was such a uphill battle um to get that relationship approval from my family.
Hmm.
um it was actually huge. Korean culture is such that like you marry within the culture. Like anything other than Korean culture is definitely like it's a uphill battle.
So how
And
did you convince your parents to let you marry this white guy?
what it actually took was actually my grandmother, my dad's mother. She is my grandparents on my dad's side. They they did something that's like unheard of for their generation. Like she ran away from home at 14 because she was in love with my grandpa. Like she was a rebel, right? And so it was I met Matt my senior year. And we had already said, okay, but once I graduate, we're done, right? We're breaking up. So graduation came and it was done. He went back home after, living in the dorms. He went back home and I was home. My grandma was here for my graduation, and I got really, really sick. I was actually like, oh my gosh, I actually kind of like really love this guy, and I don't know, if I can live without him. Like there were all these like, dramatic feelings that were happening, and yet we were broken up. And so it drove me to like become really sick. And my grandma was just kind of like, she was there, she was doing her touristy things. And then one day she asked me to coffee, and she asked me if I had a boyfriend. And I told her I don't at the moment. And she's like, but you seem really sad. So what's happening? So I told her what had been happening. And she said, I know that you don't choose who you fall in love with. And it's okay that you didn't choose who you fall in love with. Like sometimes it just happens. So if you need me to talk to your parents about this person not being Korean, like I know you're not doing it on purpose. Right. And so she ended up having a conversation with my parents that like gave my mom, I think, permission to be like, okay, let me see. Right. This guy for something other than his whiteness. And she had said, because I arranged a secret meeting between my mom and him at the most awkward lunch you can ever imagine. And she was like, I've always acknowledged that he's a nice person. I just couldn't get over the fact that he was white. And I think that conversation between my grandma and my parents like allowed him to get a chance, right, as a human being. And so that's how that relationship started. So
Shout out to grandma coming in.
yeah,
I'm just picturing
yeah,
too, 14 years old and to be running away. What was I
yeah.
doing at 14?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
like we have choice words for kids who are 14 running away in the name of love, like there's interventions that happen, and nobody and nothing could stop this lady from my grandpa. So,
Go grandma. Okay, so let's fast forward. And you had already given us that spoiler alert. So let's go there because
mhm.
what happened? You did fall in love. Your grandma gave you the props, helped open doors to make that happen.
Mhm.
And yet he was not the one.
Yeah, he wasn't though. He wasn't the one hindsight, right? Um, I think for me, I had, and I'm not 100% sure where these things came from, but I have rules that were set in my head, and maybe from my Catholic beliefs and maybe from like the things that I've learned around Korean society and like what you actually like uphold. I don't know where it all came from, but like I had beliefs around like you marry somebody and you stick with it even if it's hard. um, you go to college if you have your MRS by the end of it, awesome, right? And then you're supposed to like become a mom, and then you're supposed to just stick it through, and it just happens easily, right? This is like our 20s ideals. And so with him, it was you just gotta make it work, you know. And I think for us, what had happened was we were both growing, but not necessarily together. Um, I think I definitely end up choosing him because like he's comfortable in the sense that like he doesn't require that much emotional, output. Like I think I told you earlier that I'm really good at like making friends and building that fast relationship, but like sustaining relationship is a hard thing that I'm still learning how to do. And so we obviously got to that point, and I was just like, well, if you're comfortable and you're not going to say anything, neither am I. Want to watch TV. And he was perfectly happy with that. And we decided that it was time for us to try having kids. And after trying for a couple of years, we realized maybe we should seek fertility treatment. And so we started down that path, which obviously has like a lot of just things come up, right? Around your womanhood, around your body, and whether or not you were meant to become the mom that you always thought you wanted to be. And there was no emotional connection between this person and I throughout that entire process. And, I'm hating myself, and I'm so ashamed of myself for having to have gone through this. And like the one person who could maybe have been like a person who's like bouncing ideas off of and saying, actually, no, let's think about it a different way, just wasn't there altogether. And for me, I think that it was like a buildup of things, not one big thing happened where I was like, this relationship is done. And I can honestly say, I think even the IVF part of it wasn't like I really want to have kids with you, right? It was more of we should have kids because that's the next thing to do, right? Like we dated, we got engaged, we got married. It's time to have kids. We have dogs. It's time to have kids. And so, like I was basically going through this entire process with somebody who is like my roommate. And I think before we started doing the shots, like a couple days before, we had actually talked about like, is this really the right thing for us to do? But we're like, but we have already invested all this time, so we should, which is not a great way to approach a really, really important decision. I realize now.
It's interesting how in hindsight we see, I think maybe the universe was helping me to get to a point. So you could have, though, you could have had the baby and it could have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
And in so many ways, that would have been like a star. All your hard work, now you've got the baby, but yet that didn't happen. So what was the point that really caused you to say, I'm done?
Yeah. So I think like after it didn't work, after our cycle did not work, and there was like an incredible amount of loneliness there. And I had already been thinking about like, if I am unable to have kids, this is a person who's supposed to love me the most in my life, right? And is this enough? I had already been questioning that. I think I recognized by that point, wow, this person just really does not have emotional, what is that? Emotional intelligence, right? And that was starting to kind of like make me wonder whether or not this was the right partnership for me to be in. It was Christmas of that year. So that cycle, everything happened in June, July. It was like, this is really weird, right? And wasn't going to therapy or anything about it, just trying to deal with it by, watching TV. And because that's what we do. And then we end up going up to his hometown where his parents still live. And, we see Christmas cards on there from like, family friends and whatnot. And they're like, oh yeah, go through them and read through them. And I'm reading and like seeing pictures, and it's so great. And then all of a sudden I see like, oh, I'm sorry it didn't work out for Sujin and that. I'm like, that's weird. And then I keep reading, and then I see that like there's something very specific about like, I'm sorry that, I'm sorry that the IVF didn't work. I hope it, hopefully next year will be their year. And like, I just went, and I was like, excuse me, where is this coming from? Why are they talking about our cycle in their Christmas letter? And my ex-mother-in-law tells me, oh, well, we put it in the Christmas letter that went out. I was like, cool. So every single family member, every business partner, every friend, their parents, they all know that we went through IVF and that it didn't work. And I came undone in that moment. And it was Christmas Eve, and I was like, I don't want to be here. We gotta go. And and at that point, like his mom was like polling, right? Like, do you think I did anything wrong? I think that it's fair news to share, and blah, blah, blah. And Matt didn't really defend me. And I was done. Like, I was just done. I was like, I can't be with like an emotionally unintelligent human being, and it like it, and I saw where that's coming from. Like, it is a nature part, right? And I just didn't want to be a part of that anymore. So, yeah, like I didn't want to be with a roommate anymore, and I didn't want to be a part of an emotionally just completely depleted family.
It's interesting how, to Jane, as you walk through the years of trying to have a baby, IVF, and then this, I'll call it capstone moment, that was incredibly painful to not have your partner at the hardest of moments support you and
Yeah.
give you a hug and all of the things that were hard. And yet that was the moment that you decided. I know that what was also hard about it was you were at this time now a principal. Is that right? Like, how did you navigate that? And even thinking about your parents, or were you thinking about that?
Oh my gosh. I think if I were to be 100% honest, like I knew that our marriage was over probably 2 or 3 years into it. Like we were married for 7 years, right? So around 3 years into it, I was like, this is weird. Oh, it's time to try making babies. All right, I can work on that project, right? And like just like suppress the feelings for like the next chapter. And after IVF didn't work, and during that like 5 to 6 month period, as I was like mulling this over in my head and very much by myself, um, I was thinking about, like, from my parents' perspective, I was like, I can't let them down. I just can't. Like, I can't have a conversation about that. I know that my parents are not a perfect marriage. They are, but they're making it work. And so are all my aunts and uncles, whether or not they're actually happy or not. Like, so that's the model that I should be like working towards. Right. And so like I have that film going on in my head. And then like on the other side, like with my school, I could not face the thought of being called the divorced principal, right? Like, and I'm like, and I made this such a big thing in my head. Oh my God, the kids know me here as Miss Folks, and then they're gonna have to call me Miss Hong, and then the parents are gonna wonder why, and then they're gonna know, and they're all Catholic, and then they're gonna judge me, and then they're gonna judge me whether or not I could actually be a fit person to like, carry a school. And so I had all this pressure for why I just needed to make it work. And I can honestly say, like, getting divorced was the best gift. It's the best thing that I've ever done for myself, because being on the other side of the divorce has taught me like all those pressures, all the rules, all the playbooks that I had in my head about how life needed to go. Like, number one, came crashing down. And I realized that that's actually not what people hold as the most important thing. Like,
What do they hold as the most important thing, Sujeen?
for me to be happy, for other people to be happy, right? And it's so weird. And like how if my friend or if my brother or if my mom, if anybody that I loved was going through anything, I would never say, but it's a rule. You should stay in a marriage. You know how to make it work. Like, who says that to anybody? But like to myself, like there was no other script, right? And that's what I found out, that like people just want other people to be happy, and that they'll support you blind.
It's interesting with all the worry that at the end of the day, they wanted you to be happy, and making this huge decision opened up a ton of happiness for you.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that, because I know that it took time, but how was that transition? And then what did you open up?
Yeah. So I think, this gift of divorce for me has opened up a lot of different doors, right? Like it's given me the opportunity to like really work on myself. I've always wanted, well, I can't say always, but since high school and since deciding that education is actually a thing for me, I got to go back to school. I finished my doctorate, right? I started working on physical abilities that I never thought that I ever would have missed. In middle school and high school, when they say run a mile, I was like, yeah, I'll walk until you call time. Like that was me, right? I've ran 3 marathons. I've done a half Ironman, and I've learned like that my body is actually capable of so much more than I ever like thought it would be. My relationship with my parents has become a lot more honest. They were really upset that I informed them of my divorce instead of consulted them about like my relationship. So in that sense, things have gotten better. Of course, with my brother, my relationship is good. And it opened me to understand like what I seek in relationships, and um, like, and that was really eye-opening, right? Like somebody who's just like emotionally unavailable is like comfortable for me. But I think what I was really seeking was somebody who's warm, who is emotionally capable of having conversations that sometimes, and who can push me, right, to have the conversations when I don't want to, which opened me to a possibility of love with my current partner, who is just, he's just a phenomenal human being, right? I think it's difficult because he pushes me to be okay with discomfort around talking about emotional stuff. Like he's just really good about that. And I think our partnership and our relationship also gave way to like, the greatest gift for both of us, which is to have become parents, to an adorable half Filipino, half Korean kid, who just does amazing things and like humbles us every day. So, yeah, those are all the possibilities that opened up because of it.
I think it's interesting that the struggle to get pregnant with your first husband didn't happen the second time around. The universe just said yes, and now you're ready.
Right? Yeah, we were actually literally in the process of about to start IUI, to try and get pregnant, and literally I was like, where's my period? If the period doesn't come now, then I start school on Monday, and it's just going to be really difficult for us to go through this cycle. Then I'm going to have to wait to February, and so like the Thursday before school was supposed to start, I was like, okay, I just need to know, like, is it happening or not? And like when it came back positive, I was like, there's no way. I think I peed on like 20 sticks that day because I was pretty sure that something was wrong. So yeah, but you're right. I think there is something beautiful about, I think, seeing that, right? Like when things are meant to be, it's going to work out, and you don't have to like flail and make it happen. It just will. And that's hard to do.
What would you say, Sujeen, to someone listening to you and wondering about their own partnership or marriage? And there's all this societal pressure about what a successful leader, mom does, which is keep it together. My own mom kept her marriage together for the benefit of my brother and me. So what would you say to someone like that who's on the brink, but not yet decided?
I think, I think it's hard to be in a relationship, and it's also hard to not be in a relationship. And I think to truly know like where you are, only you know, right? And just know that if there are other things or other people or fear of other people that's holding you back from it, making the decision that you want to, like, I think that's like that piece, right? Like truly make the decision about to stay or to leave based on what you need, and everything else will fall into place. And that's such a radically difficult thing to do, I think, for women, right? Because we are just naturally, we worry about everybody else and how they're going to be and the fallout from that. Like I can tell you, like from the divorce, like the first thing that came to my mind was like my niece and nephew. Like, how are they going to be? You know, I'm going to be there one day and not, like, and but they're fine. I'm sure they're thriving, you know. But in that moment, I think we tend to muddy our own needs with everybody else's potential judgment. And I could tell you, being on this other side, like that judgment isn't there. And I think if I had chosen to stay, that judgment still would not be there. You know, I think people would naturally believe that I'm staying because I want to be happy. And now that I've left, I can also tell you people still want you to be happy.
People want us to be happy. People want us to be
Mm-hmm.
happy. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
All right. With that, Sujeen, let's do our lightning round questions. Chocolate or vanilla?
Oh, vanilla.
Cooking or takeout?
Oh, I would, okay. I think I'm going to say takeout, but if it was baking or cooking, I would say baking. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
I am really, really, really ashamed to say this. Yes, but only because my school in Korea was very East Coast influenced. And so unfortunately, I did wear socks with Birks while I was in school there. I regret it till this day.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
I'm going to rate myself like 8 or a 7. Yep.
What's a recent book you read?
Oh, I think I was telling you this earlier. I'm reading 3 books at the same time. Like that's how I roll. So yeah, I can't do one book at a time.
What's one of them?
I'm doing 400 Souls right now. I'm working through 400 Souls by Ibram X. Kendi and Keisha, I think it's Blaine. And then, yeah, so that's one of the books.
What's the favorite way to practice self-care?
I am right now all about the Peloton. Yeah, I would say like Club Bangers ride with Alex Toussaint on Peloton. That's self-care right now.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
Somebody who is authentically themselves at work as well as at home, and like is very honest about like being okay with there not being a true, like, I don't know, like we have like this is my professional life versus my personal life. Like I think I've realized like there's no such thing. I need to take my whole self everywhere.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, Sujeen. What would I tell her? Maybe pursue that comedy career, huh? Yeah, maybe that would have been. Just don't be afraid of what other people think. Just do it.
It's not too late.
Yeah, your mom will be okay with it.
Where can we find you? Like LinkedIn or anywhere else?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Sujeen Hong and Instagram at Lady Suj. I know it's weird. LADYSUJE 98. And I'm pretty active on social media. And I'm trying not to be one of those moms with just, Asher stuff, but it is just Asher stuff for right now.
And last question, do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts to share with the audience?
I think it's hard. Life is hard. Um, and life is also rewarding. And I think it's like that and, right? Like I've been really trying to live with the and just knowing that like a truly, I think meaningful life is being even keeled and like not being extremely happy and not being extremely sad. And if you feel both, that's okay too, right? So just let's try and live in the and together. So,
Thank you so much, Sujeen. I really appreciated our conversation.
thank you, Miss. Thank you for this opportunity to reflect on life and share the little that I've learned.